Who did this? Who caged me here? Johnny Blaze rides again. It's about to get gross. Maybe. It depends upon your level of squick tolerance. If you don't like Carpenter-style monsters, then yes, it's about to get gross. If you're fine with that, then it's about to get, I guess, just more usual horror. Greetings, comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics. Ghostrider time. Today we're taking a look at the Ghostrider relaunch. Ongoing mini-series, who knows, at least 5 issues, time we're recording. They're doing that by going back to the OG, but not the real OG. The second OG, who most consider the first OG, Johnny Blaze. Sorry, Carter Slade. They renamed him to the Phantom Rider anyway, so it's fine. Johnny Blaze's Ghostrider debuted in Marvel Spotlight number 5 in 1972, a part of the supernatural boom as a part of the Comics Code revisions that lessened restrictions surrounding supernatural and occult imagery, themes, and characters. This, coupled with the rise of hard rock and at times overtly satanic imagery, gave rise to the characters like Ghostrider. That's so much rise. Rising said so many times in these sentences. They rose. Some of these characters could get pretty hardcore. There's even a comic just called Son of Satan, featuring Damien Hellstrom, who was actually the son of Satan until I got retconned, because then it was too far. Later on, that was too hardcore. Dial it back. We did a video on Johnny's first appearance featuring some intense Ova Sutherland. His first outing is surprisingly faithfully adapted in the first Ghostrider film, the one starring Nicolas Cage from 2007. Years, Ghostrider's lore would expand. Johnny would be replaced by other riders. Some would prove more memorable than others, such as the 90s' Danny Ketch, who would later be revealed to be Johnny's brother. People also tend to remember Robbie Reyes from the 2010s. His version was adapted in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Others have fallen more to the wayside, like Alejandra Jones, and there are more still. The function of the Ghostrider also expanded, and the characters began to overlap in terms of who was active and who wasn't, and what their overall lore was doing. There was even a cosmic Ghostrider arc. Ghostrider in space. On the whole, some felt that Ghostrider needed to be taken back to basics. It had expanded too far. This was the sentiment taken by the creative team helming his 50th anniversary. Writer Benjamin Percy had this to say. Oh yes, quotes for Ghostrider. The mythology has been growing bigger and wilder and more intricate and complicated over the years. All of that is awesome. I'm not disregarding or ignoring any of it. I just think it's time, after so much expansion, to slow down and tighten things up a bit and go deep on character. So I'm taking a back to basics approach to kick things off. This is the 50th anniversary of the title, and we're going to honor legacy while also burning rubber into a dark new future for the spirit of vengeance. The goal of this series is also to take a more horror-based approach. This following the success of series such as The Immortal Hulk, which really took the Hulk into the body horror genre. On his influences, Percy stated, "I'm a horror head. I grew up reading Stephen King, watching John Carpenter, and listening to Black Sabbath, and when it came to comics, I always reached first for the dark and weird, which means I read a hell of a lot of Ghostrider. That flaming skull, that spiked leather jacket, that monstrous bike coughing out clouds of sulfurous exhaust. He also loves long walks on the beach and pina coladas." In all seriousness, Ghostrider is indeed a look. You've got to be trying really hard to not make Ghostrider look cool. This is one of those comics where all the variants are pretty evenly matched, minus this one Gwen variant. It's not that it's bad, it's just so hilariously out of place. Gwen, dressed as Emma Frost. Happy 50th anniversary, Ghostrider. Look, it's just not the same if a skull isn't on fire. So what does taking it back to basics mean in this context? It's dumping him in the middle of a seemingly idyllic existence, which is meant to make the reader ponder, how did he get there? Cause if one is familiar with things canonically, right away there are a bunch of red flags of things that cannot or should not be happening. This is also meant to be a mystery for Johnny, because he can't remember how he got there either. So how is it? Is it horrific? Does it make you want to run out there and buy a motorcycle or at least a leather jacket? Well, let's take a look at the first issue and find out. I'm Sasha. I think I forgot to introduce myself. That's fine. This story, as mentioned, is by Benjamin Percy, with art by Cory Smith, and colors by Brian Valenza, and lettering by Travis Lanham. The cover is pretty cool. It's classic Ghostrider and looking slick. Despite how iconic this main cover is by Cale New, based on what the story is actually about, this Jorge Fornes one really stands out to me, with Ghostrider peeking through the blinds, which is also a little funny. Honey, the Ghostrider's spying on us again. Yes, this is gonna have Johnny in suburbia. But all is not what it seems, cause suburbia, am I right? Because that has definitely not been done many times. At this point, if the character is in suburbia and nothing happens, that would be the subversion of expectations. But just because an idea has been frequently visited doesn't mean that someone can't breathe new life into it or that it can't be done exceptionally well. Maybe something unique can crop up. Unfortunately, that will not be the case here. Percy also describes some of his influence as Lynchian a la Blue Velvet, exploring the veneer of polite society to expose the seedy undercurrents representing different aspects in human nature inherent to many. But when it comes to that, in this first issue, we don't get that deep. It stays very much in the surface commentary area. area. Just kind of a suburbs, slightly sketch. We open on a very familiar framing device time of recording, and that's Johnny Blaze in a therapy session. He's not doing well. There's a painting of a sow behind him. Pay attention, pig symbolism incoming. The art really sells what a hard time he's having. Just the dark circles under his eyes. You believe he is not sleeping. We learn quite quickly that these are court-ordered sessions, and we see a huge scar on the side of his head. How are the headaches? Headache, you mean? Never goes away. Feels like something's trying to get out or get in. Johnny has a drinking problem. He drinks himself to sleep so he can avoid horrible dreams featuring the Ghostrider. He has some kind of amnesia after suffering a devastating motorcycle accident that left him brain damaged. So he's suffering from mood swings, hallucinations, those memory gaps. Which, well, even at this point, even though it's setting up the reasons for why he's acting the way he is, it is still hard to buy into. You know you're reading Ghostrider. You saw the flaming skull on the cover. So when you see things like demons in the shadows, most likely all you're thinking about is a countdown to when Johnny catches up with the audience. It's not poorly done. On the contrary, all of the things that are laid out make sense. There are concrete reasons why Johnny could be seeing these things and feeling what he's feeling. The disconnect arises from the very nature of the type of character he is and the history many are familiar with. Still, it is well handled enough that some may find this to be a really fun way to ease back into Johnny Blaze. Every step empties you further. That's when your eyelids drop. You see nothing. Go nowhere. That's where I'm happiest. Nowhere. That's a really cool panel, and also is representative of the relationship Johnny and the Ghostrider have here, in that Ghostrider subsumes Johnny, and Johnny doesn't really remember what the Ghostrider does fully. So in essence, he is nowhere. So it's an interesting way of highlighting him both chasing down and running from this feeling of being the Ghostrider. Johnny lives in Hayden Falls, a town with the perfect name for this kind of horror outing. It's overly picturesque. Johnny seemingly has it all. A wife, Roxanne, his high school sweetheart, and stepsister, but shh, and 2 kids. Now for those up on their canon, right away all of this is a red flag. Roxanne's alive status varies, but her together with Johnny status was not something that was going on. Last time I checked, she was dead, but she may have been alive again, but she wasn't with Johnny. So right away, if you're up on canon, it's what? How? Alternate dimension? Wasn't Johnny the king of hell? He was, but he left, and then that was an absolute carnage. He went and he got Mephisto. A lot of stuff happened. There's also a dog here obeying horror movie tropes and barking at Johnny. Before Johnny leaves the office, he has to repeat a mantra. My name's Johnny Blaze, and there's no such thing as monsters. This serves as a way for him to exposit about his accident and what has happened to him, including Grey's Anatomy's favorite injury, a hematoma. Is it subdermal? Please tell me it's subdermal. I got memory gaps, anxiety, paranoia, but I got a family and a community that cares about me, and I'm gonna get better. I mean, with situations like this, it's not always about getting better. Sometimes it's just about finding a new normal. But who am I to argue with Johnny's demon therapist? He gets a prescription for the nightmares and for the waking hallucinations he says he's not having. You can really see the thing influence in this dog. As Johnny is walking home, a local cop pulls up to harass him, horror movie style. You can even see it in the half lighting on his face. He's not only asking him about the neighbor's dog, but also mocking him for not driving because people say he's afraid since the accident, which, yeah, why wouldn't he be? I don't think I'd drive either. So much for the community caring about him. Pim, that's the dog that was barking at him, is dead and shoved into a mailbox. For reasons. Why does this cop suspect Johnny? Just cause? Okay. Rearview mirror says objects might be closer than they appear. Imagine if your whole life was like that. If you couldn't trust your eyes. There is a cool panel where he rounds this corner and it's a small child eating ice cream instead of the demon shadow he was seeing. As he wanders the graveyard at night drinking, there's this neat little segment where he talks about the sense memories he has, these fragments. I don't remember crashing, but my body does. And that feeling, that scared, tense, nerve-shredding feeling that comes with the highway noise, I kinda like it. It makes me hurt, but the hurt is good. That panel of his scar opening up to be an eye is the one pretty cool, distinct piece of horror art that is in this that really stands out. Just with the stitching stretching to accommodate it, it really achieves that uncomfortable, visceral feeling. Meanwhile, at the FBI, there's more paranormal activity afoot. So this former SHIELD agent, Talia Warroad, don't worry if you don't recognize her, this is her first appearance. And yes, she was purposely designed to look like Elizabeth from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. She wants funds to set up a mobile unit because there's been paranormal activity spikes. Isn't it obvious? I hunt monsters. Johnny is trying to teach his son to ride a bike and encouraging him by saying it's in their blood. But you crashed, Daddy! You crashed! No lies detected. It was a poor opener, Johnny. But he has no time for skin needs and kid trauma. He's got to get to work with Crash Simpson, his father-in-law, at their auto shop, Crash and Blaze. Yeah, I'm not getting my car repaired there. There's a really unsubtle exchange here where Crash tells Johnny that he's a great husband to his daughter and father to his grandkids and has a house and a car and he's living the American nightmare. Oh wait, the American dream. That's the kind of exchange that tends to play out better in film or on TV, because with the way panels are laid out, especially on this page where they're right next to each other, your eyes can skip ahead, and so that surprise element is kind of spoiled. You already know what's going to be said. Whereas in a film, you could have framed it around Johnny's face and just have him listening so that you're in the same position as him, just listening to what Crash is saying. And then you can be surprised when it doesn't exactly go where you expect, even though this is a pretty telegraphed exchange. It also works better if the word that is being replaced sounds like the initial word, so it is something that could conceivably be misheard. Less on the nose, but suburbia, am I right? Apple pie, baseball, and all that stuff. If a character is actually going to say that later on. Actually, he's here right now. A stranger comes to town with some clanging boots and a coat with dark angel wing ruffles, but also angel wings painted on the back, just in case you missed the symbolism. His design is pretty fun though, with that uncanny valley slightly off, but in universe you can buy that some people might not notice, even though look at how pointy his teeth are. He incites some kids to fight because he's got this kind of symbol on his hand. You see the symbol later, but you see that he's done something with the baseball and it's got a skull on it now. He's causing violence and havoc. Apple pies and baseball and fireflies. We get it. Johnny's latest therapy session is not going well. That pig painting is transforming, and just like Johnny is crumbling, so is that pig. It's wounded and decaying, and having its head ripped off by a chain. Pigs can symbolize many things. In this case, it seems to be symbolizing innocence or ignorance in terms of it being related to Johnny. But you can read it multiple ways because pigs are an ancient and cross-cultural symbol and also have their own horror-themed codex as well. Johnny still has his bike. He kept it, and it's in the garage, and every now and again he's drawn to it and is gonna touch it, but then Roxanne keeps luring him away with sex. In the painting, a wolf approaches. So if Johnny is the pig, the ghostwriter is the wolf. The wolf arrives tearing the decayed sow apart as Johnny's therapist starts asking him about sex. In an exchange that's going for a bit of a Barker-esque feel, but with Carpenter's art. Do you agree that pain is its own kind of pleasure? No, I'll kill you! No sadomasochism for Johnny Blaze. Got it. Johnny leaves his now back in human form and terrified therapist in a daze as he walks home thinking about how there's no such thing as monsters and the town has just descended into chaos. People being killed, churches burning, looting, and when he returns home, he sees his wife and children as demons, which causes him to become violently ill and also go seek out some alcohol. Roxanne goes to comfort him and he lashes out at her, saying that he's not crazy. This is a well-handled exchange, and she comes across as afraid and says he's scaring her and the kids and he's hurting her. But again, there are some key areas where it falls flat. We've seen the magician enter town at this point and affect people with his magic. We've seen Talia Warroad saying that there's all this supernatural activity afoot. We've seen the side of his head open. We know he's not crazy. In fact, that's quite firm. It's not a question. And it's that little bit of doubt that makes these setups work. Even if you know it's not the case, just that little ability to believe it might be is what these types of stories need to help the immersion into this framing device work. Here the suspense is less what's real and what isn't, and more when do we get to see the ghostwriter? Soon, very soon. Johnny looks at her and says that he doesn't remember giving her that ring, maybe asking, what ring? Which is a fair question because it has not been highlighted up until this point, and even though they're talking about it, it still isn't in the panels they're discussing it. But she's saved by the bell, which rings, and then it's Zeb, that's the name of this mysterious stranger who's come to town. He gives her his card, which says magician on it. It is a magician tarot card because he is a magician. Just imagine him going to a store and buying only the magician cards out of the pack. He also makes a big deal about the ring, which is now drawn in, but still not entirely as a focal point. I actually went back and checked up until this point in the story, and the ring hadn't been highlighted at all as important. It was there in some panels, but never foregrounded or shown to be unduly influencing Johnny. Zeb tells him that that isn't his wife and that this isn't his town. No, he says ain't. That this ain't his town. Zeb says he was sent by a group of night magicians to find him. So do day magicians all walk around in Technicolor dream coats and have crew cuts? I need to know. But Zeb is hit by the police cruiser, which is hilarious. How would Johnny not find that suspicious? If they're trying to maintain the illusion, they're failing very hard. Zeb says that the world went to hell when Johnny went dark. And he holds out his hand and it's got an occult symbol on it, and Johnny takes it and then has a vision of all the things he's probably going to have to deal with as ghostwriter. It's a full-page spread of horror imagery. Look, an open eye and a puzzle box. Fun. We need the spirit of vengeance Come back to us if the spirit moves you. Nice use of biblical allegory, Zeb, but he's off, transformed into a crow. The town starts trying to get Johnny back, saying that he can have the status quo back, but it might work better if that neighbor wasn't holding their dead dog. But Johnny is done, and he cuts off his demon wife's fingers to get at that ring that was super important. He tosses it into the fire, which releases the spirit of the ghostwriter, allowing him to transform. When the hellstorm of fire descends upon me, I realize I'm about to trade one prison for another. A much cooler prison with a flaming head that everybody will admire. Who did this? Who caged me here? So we see the town is a hellhole. His family, demons. There's a super horrifying on a psychological level thing that Johnny was sleeping with this demon, raising these hellspawn, that all these demons were there catering to him, some loving it, others resenting him like the cop, others jealous like the therapist, but that form of horror is just ignored. Forget it, Johnny's subsumed now, he doesn't have to deal with that. Ghostrider can deal with that and he doesn't care. Johnny doesn't have to think about the fact that actually his loved ones are still dead, or some of them never existed, it's fine. There could have been a bit of an interesting angle here, the idea that some of the demons wanted to keep him there not because whoever told them to do it, but because they were enjoying their life in suburbia because it was much better than hell. But that would ruin the suburbia, am I right? There are so many questions. Who killed the neighbor's dog? Why would they do that if Johnny was having such a hard time accepting this illusion? Because Johnny didn't do it. They didn't showcase that the ghostwriter was somehow bursting out and doing these things, so somebody else must have killed the dog. Why have the ring that could free the ghostwriter so close to Johnny at all times? Did it have to be? Was that how it worked? Doesn't matter. The crash demon tries to reason with Johnny, but Johnny's not there anymore. And Percy shows once more that he did read the Hellbound heart. The pain is the pleasure. I can't control what I become. The story tries once more for a maybe it was demons or maybe he's hallucinating, but it doesn't land. Can you imagine if it did ultimately go it was all a crazy dream route? Riots in the streets like Hayden Falls. Why was this happening? Was the town always like this, or was it co-opted for these demons' purpose? Was every single person a demon? Did Zeb cast a spell that made it all fall apart, or was it always like that and Johnny just didn't notice because he was taking the pills? Doesn't matter, we need to round off the whole monster theme. There's such a thing as monsters, and I'm the worst one of them all. That's debatable, especially in the Marvel universe. Oh man, the cover for the next issue looks really cool. Anyway, issue 1. This issue is ever so slightly oversized at 32 pages, so there's a bit more room to get more Johnny in your life. This outing is a good setup for what it's trying to do. It wants to reset Johnny in the driver's seat for Ghostrider. It does that. It wants to set up a mystery as to what happened to Johnny and also what happened to the world without his Ghostrider. It does that. It also wants to bait the hook with the promise of lots of supernatural horror happenings, which it does. It all comes down to how well the execution lands, which will vary. This issue is full of very familiar tropes and imagery. The suburban town that isn't what it seems, the therapy session framing device, the entire concept of what's real, what isn't, is he crazy? Which is arguably the weakest executed of the tropes on display, as it feels like the one that's just in the way and needs to be shed to get to Ghostrider. And yet, so long is spent in these trappings, which are very well-trodden territory, that some of the more interesting and unique details or even key ones are left to the wayside. And this may be because the author himself stated that his heart wasn't entirely in this portion. He stated, "There will be a lot of uncertainty when the story begins. Consider Johnny an unreliable narrator. Does the spirit of vengeance even exist? Yes, it does. Or is it all the product of the brain trauma suffered in his wreck? As things progress, know that I'm more interested in the spirit of vengeance as a curse that manifests in Johnny and treats him as a vessel and servant. There is a severance of control." So it makes sense that the parts in the issue where it got to play with that concept were the ones that felt the most lively. One doesn't fully feel a connection between Johnny and his demon family, so one can't lament their loss, which would have been very horrific if you felt that struggle in Johnny of loving his life and wanting it, and these things tearing him away. But Johnny always feels distant and suspicious of this life, not connected to it. As a result, the reader most likely won't connect with it either, instead latching on to the more horrific elements. But there are still certain plot threads that are neglected or underdeveloped. Core elements such as the ring that aren't brought up, leaving one in a position where while overall it was clear Johnny was being manipulated, there weren't clues laid that the reader could follow, so there isn't a payoff at the end when he slices those fingers off. Instead, it's more gore for gore's sake, such as the dog in the mailbox. Now, of course, one's relationship to horror is relative. Everybody has a different fear factor and different reference points, so some of these images may be more or less familiar. For some, what is being seen here may be quite novel. The imagery in this issue is pretty cool. Lots of dark shadows nose, decay, peeking eyes in the wrong places, a horror staple. However, it at times feels like a mishmash of horror tropes thrown on top of each other and not ones that are coalescing into a unique or distinct style. All the horror tropes here can be utilized and blended together, but there doesn't feel like there's a core theme uniting them. There's the sadomasochistic undertones a la Barker, but they appear more for shock value, or as a very on-the-nose things are different in hell commentary. You know, like literally saying pain is pleasure. Come on, let's at least couch it in a we have such sights to show you. The body horror is there, but again, it's not consistent in how it's portrayed. It shifts sometimes from Carpenter-esque to more generic hellspawn. The psychological horror is also playing in very paint-by-numbers territory, ignoring some of the truly dreadful things happening to Johnny via this manipulation. Still, it is nice to see a horror-focused comic, especially around Ghostrider, who is a character that lends himself very well to it. He was made for it. So hopefully it'll all come together in its kind of own twisted metal type deal. What is the most exciting thing about this issue is the promise of where Ghostrider is going, the events that have been set up. He's left Hayden Falls and he's going to come into a clash with this agent Talia Warroad. What's up with those night magicians? What horrible supernatural atrocities must be avenged? There was a motel. You know that's always a fun time, except for the people who are at the motel. Miles will vary on having a 50th anniversary relaunch focused solely on Johnny for the moment. As mentioned, the Ghostrider lore has grown, and for some, the other writers deserve just as much credit with keeping the love for the franchise alive as Johnny. This issue at points also does have some trying hard energy, as in trying to be metal or trying to be cool rather than just being. Overall, this issue shows a clear appreciation for Ghostrider and horror, and there's an excitement behind it from the creative team. Here's what Smith had to say. I felt I needed a quote from the artist as well, because he also had things to say. He deserves a quote. As a comic nerd and a horror nerd, Ghostrider has always been a favorite of mine, so this project is a dream come true. Johnny Blaze, the Spirit of Vengeance, is back. We're firing on all cylinders, and I can't wait for everyone to see the hellfire we're bringing. It's about to get crazy. But not actually, because he wasn't crazy. Okay, show me what you got, but it's already pretty crazy up here. So Ghostrider #1, those were my thoughts and I want to hear yours. Did you love this issue? It was metal and horrific. You can't wait to blaze more with Johnny. Or was it meh? Or did it not grab you? Or do you want to give it a bit to see where it's going? What did you think was up with the symbolism with the pig? Were its horror influences too obvious or not changed enough? Where's Danny? Who's Danny? Tell me things down below, and while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time today to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.